You're listening to Audiology. Support our work on Patreon and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. Introduction. The Sons of Iraq, also known as the Awakening, was an alliance formed in 2005 in Iraq's Al-Anbar province, consisting of Sunni tribal chiefs and ex-members of the Ba'athist Iraqi military. Their aim was to bring peace to their regions. With support from U.S. General Petraeus and American forces, this group was marked by moderate stances. Upon taking office, Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki leveraged sectarian tensions to strengthen his hold on power. He labeled the Sons of Iraq as a threat to the nation, purposefully breaking up the coalition and rejecting their integration into Iraq's official security forces. This left former members of the alliance with limited choices, including unemployment or joining extremist groups like the Islamic State. The marginalization of the Sons of Iraq contributed significantly to the country's inability to achieve peace and played a role in the outbreak of conflict in Iraq from 2013 to 2017. Overview. The Sunni tribes in Iraq's Anbar province began an uprising in 2005, which quickly transformed into a nationwide paramilitary force within a year. These fighters, referred to as the Awakening, were acknowledged for significantly reducing violence in the regions where they were active. Despite their success, there were concerns over their rapid expansion, especially because their paychecks came directly from the U.S. military at first. There were worries about some members' former anti-coalition activities and the potential infiltration by al-Qaeda elements. The then Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki was wary of these groups, seeing them as a potential Sunni militia in formation, and insisted they should be integrated into the formal Iraqi military or police forces. In response to these concerns, the Iraqi Defense Ministry disbanded the Awakening groups in 2009 to prevent them from becoming an independent force. Following their poor performance in that year's elections, some of these groups threatened to incite violence and trigger a tribal conflict. Anbar Awakening. In 2005, the Albu Mahals tribe, known for their role in smuggling activities across the border between Syria and Iraq, experienced a forced shift from their land by the Al-Salmani tribe, which had ties to al-Qaeda in Iraq. Seeking new allies, the displaced Albu Mahals reached out to the local U.S. Marine Corps battalion, led by Lieutenant Colonel Dale Alford, in November 2005 to form an alliance. As part of this new collaboration, the tribe began to receive weapons and training from the U.S. forces. Between August and December 2006, al-Qaeda in Iraq established control over the Anbar province, with a particular stronghold in Ramadi, the provincial capital. Initially, the Sunni sheikhs and local officials in the region had worked with al-Qaeda to counter the influences of both the Shiite-dominated government and Shiite insurgents. However, over time, they became disillusioned with al-Qaeda's extremist activities, which did not align with their own interests. As a result, these local leaders united with U.S. troops, the Iraqi police, and the Iraqi army to oppose al-Qaeda. Their collective effort, known as the Awakening, involved strengthening the city council of Ramadi, and they eventually reclaimed control of both Ramadi and Fallujah from the insurgents. This awakening came to be seen as a prime example of effective counterinsurgency strategy, and it was highlighted in President George W. Bush's State of the Union address as an embodiment of new counterinsurgency policy ideals. President Bush's speech outlined 6 key points that had been achieved in Iraq, reflecting the unity and cooperation among citizens, local officials, and U.S. forces to recover and safeguard their cities. Despite some members of the U.S. intelligence community cautioning against potential risks, a significant setback occurred in September 2007 when a key figure in the Awakening, Sheikh Abdul Sattar Buzai al-Rishawi, and 2 of his bodyguards were killed by a bomb near his home in Ramadi. His brother, Ahmed Abu Risha, assumed leadership after his death, but struggled to maintain the same level of unity among the various Awakening militias. In October 2008, the responsibility for compensating 54,000 members of the Awakening Councils transitioned from the American military to the Iraqi government. Many members of the awakening were skeptical of the Iraqi government's commitment to securing employment for them after the transition. One member even went so far as to express that the handover felt like a betrayal by the U.S. Army. Work in Iraq. The American military and Iraqi administration provided financial compensation to militia groups on the condition that they cease hostilities against coalition forces, assume responsibility for local security, and actively oppose other Sunni militant factions. According to the U.S. military, these militias, often referred to as awakening councils, were effective in assisting with more targeted operations against al-Qaeda in Iraq, thereby reducing unintended harm to civilians. The Washington Post has noted that the presence of these groups prompted al-Qaeda in Iraq to moderate its approach in an attempt to win back community support after the militia's opposition efforts. Al-Qaeda in Iraq has sharply criticized these awakening councils for their involvement in combat against fellow insurgents and for collaborating with what they derogatorily called filthy crusaders. Some individuals within the awakening groups were reportedly once part of the insurgency they now fought against. Consequently, there were incidents of internal violence, including suicide attacks carried out by former allies against these groups. Additionally, tribal leaders who engaged with the awakening movement often became targets for assassination by forces antagonistic to the movement. The Government Accountability Office, serving as the investigative branch of the U.S. Congress, cautioned that despite these developments, the awakening councils had yet to achieve a full reconciliation with the Iraqi government. This left openings for the potential continuation of insurgent activities. However, the report by this office faced scrutiny and was criticized for its limited empirical evidence, as well as for being overly dependent on perspectives from analysts operating within the relatively insulated environment of the international zone, commonly known as the Green Zone in Baghdad. Disbanding. The Iraqi Defense Ministry, which is primarily made up of Shia Muslims, has announced its intention to dissolve the Sunni tribal militias known as the awakening groups to prevent them from evolving into an autonomous military entity. Defense Minister Abdul Qadir al-Obaidi has firmly stated that the formation of a third military body distinct from the national security forces is entirely unacceptable, and these groups will not be permitted to establish any sort of lasting organizational structure, like a main office, that could legitimize their existence over time. The government of Iraq has committed to integrating roughly a quarter of the awakening fighters into the existing primarily Shia security forces. The rest are supposed to receive vocational training. The Interior Ministry is hiring some of these fighters on temporary contracts. 7,000 have already been hired, and there are plans to hire 3,000 more. But the specifics of these contracts, including their duration and the exact roles to be filled, have not been detailed. Experts like Deborah Avant and Ramzi Mardini have expressed concerns about the awakening councils. Avant draws parallels between them and other armed factions in history that, while initially helpful militarily, later hindered the process of state development. Mardini warns that the emergence of these councils could provoke renewed conflict with the militia known as Jaish al-Mahdi, despite its leader, Muqtada al-Sadr, extending a ceasefire as of February 22, 2008. Mardini notes that the status of the awakening movement could truncate this ceasefire and jeopardize the American troop escalation strategy, even potentially leading to a regression to the pre-escalation level of conflict. However, these concerns have not materialized, as the increased troop levels from the US-UK surge in 2007 have not led to the feared outcomes. In August 2008, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki offered jobs to 3,000 Sons of Iraq members in Diyala province, hopeful that it would encourage intelligence sharing on militants. Some of these fighters were also involved in military actions in Diyala. In March 2009, a leading figure in the awakening movement from Fadil, Baghdad, Adel al-Mashadani, was apprehended on charges including murder. This led to a 2-day armed clash between awakening fighters and Shia government forces. Al-Mashadani was later found guilty and received a death sentence. By June 2012, approximately 70,000 awakening fighters had been either absorbed into the Iraqi security forces or employed in civilian capacities, with 30,000 still operating checkpoints on government salaries. In an effort to manage Sunni-led protests which began in December 2012, Shia-appointed officials announced a raise for Awakening Council members in January 2013 from 300,000 to 500,000 Iraqi dinars per month. On January 21, 2013, the Shia-led Iraqi government carried out the execution of 26 men convicted on terrorism charges, among them Adel Mashadani, who had been arrested and sentenced to death previously for the murder of a young girl as part of a reprisal attack. Governorate elections in 2009. During the 2009 regional elections in Iraq, multiple political groups that emerged from the Awakening initiatives participated in the contest. In the province of Anbar, the coalition known as the Iraq Awakening and Independence National Alliance secured the most seats, coming out ahead of other parties. Islamic State reprisals. After Nouri al-Maliki secured another term as prime minister in 2010, the Islamic State initiated a targeted spree of killings aimed at Sunni tribal chiefs and surviving members of the Awakening movement situated in the Al-Anbar region of Iraq. This wave of violence, which included drive-by and close-range executions, was captured in a video released by the Islamic State entitled "The Clanging of the Swords." Over a 4-year period spanning from 2009 to 2013, attacks resulted in the death of 1,345 individuals associated with the Awakening movement. In Jurf al-Sakar, a small town to the south of Iraq's capital city Baghdad, 46 people linked with the Awakening were murdered across 27 separate violent episodes.